The massive space station called Unity 7 hung in the dark void between two star systems like a giant metal flower. Its rotating rings sparkled with lights from 1,000 different windows and docking bays. Ships from across the galaxy had arrived here over the past week, each one carrying representatives who would decide the fate of an entire species. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the curved hallways of the station, his black uniform crisp and clean despite the long journey from Earth. Behind him, Captain Lisa Brooks checked her datapad for the 100th time, making sure all the human documents were in order. Dr. Nathan Cole carried a simple briefcase, filled with papers that contained 3 years of war statistics, casualty reports, and economic data that painted a grim picture of humanity's situation. The war had started when humans first made contact with the Galactic Council 3 years ago. What should have been a historic moment of peaceful first contact had quickly turned into accusations and threats. The aliens claimed humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to be allowed to expand into space. When diplomatic talks failed, 12 alien species had formed an alliance to stop human expansion by force. Morrison remembered the early days of the conflict, when human colonies were being destroyed one by one. Earth's military had been designed to fight other humans, not creatures that could phase through solid matter or ships that could bend space and time. But humans had learned quickly, adapting their tactics and technology with a speed that surprised even themselves. The Admiral stopped at a large window that looked out into space. Dozens of alien warships floated in formation around the station, their strange shapes and glowing engines creating an intimidating display of power. There were the needle-like vessels of the Zephyrian Empire, covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. The Crystalline Collective had sent their living ships that looked like giant jellyfish made of pure energy. Even the massive, slug-like vessels of the Mordani were there, their organic hulls pulsing with a sickly green light. "Sir, we should head to the conference room," Brooks said quietly. "The others are probably already there." Morrison nodded, and they continued down the hallway. The station's artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth normal, probably set to accommodate the larger alien species. Human voices echoed strangely in the alien architecture, and Morrison noticed how the walls seemed to curve in ways that hurt to look at for too long. The conference room was enormous, with a circular table that could seat representatives from all the major galactic powers. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and strange lights that didn't cast shadows provided illumination. As the humans entered, conversations in dozens of alien languages fell silent. High Chancellor Vrex of the Zephyrian Empire dominated one section of the table. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, with 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws and a head that looked like a cross between a mantis and a spider. His compound eyes tracked the humans as they took their seats across from him. The representative from the Crystalline Collective was harder to look at directly. It appeared as a constantly shifting form of light and energy, occasionally taking shapes that resembled geometric patterns before dissolving back into chaos. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music played through broken glass. Commander Gorth of the Mordani delegation was perhaps the most disturbing to human eyes. His species looked like enormous slugs with dozens of tentacles and eyes scattered across their bodies. Acid dripped constantly from his mouth, requiring a special containment field around his chair. Other species were represented as well. The bird-like avrans with their colorful feathers and sharp beaks. The rock-like lithoids who communicated through vibrations in the floor. The aquatic deep swimmers in their water-filled environmental suits. All of them had one thing in common. They wanted humanity either controlled or destroyed. High Counselor Nexus of the Vorthan Republic was the only neutral party present. His species looked almost human except for their blue skin and the fact that they had no eyes. They navigated by sensing electromagnetic fields, which made them excellent mediators since they couldn't be influenced by visual displays of power or intimidation. Morrison sat down at the human section of the table with Brooks on his right and Cole on his left. The other human representatives filled in the remaining seats. There were only 12 humans in total, facing off against representatives from species that controlled thousands of worlds and commanded fleets with millions of ships. Now that all parties are present, Nexus announced, we can begin the final peace negotiations. His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that allowed all the different species to understand each other. The terms have been agreed upon by all members of the Alliance. Chancellor Vrex stood up, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture that was probably meant to be impressive but looked more like a threat to the humans. The terms are generous, considering the destruction your species has caused, he said, his voice a harsh clicking sound even through the translator. You will surrender 70% of your colonial worlds to be redistributed among the Alliance members. Morrison kept his face blank, but inside he was calculating. 70% of human colonies meant billions of people would lose their homes. Families that had worked for generations to build new lives on distant worlds would be forced to abandon everything. You will also submit to galactic oversight of all human military forces, the Crystalline Collective's representative added, its voice shifting through several different tones. No human vessel may be constructed or deployed without approval from the Galactic Council. This was worse than Morrison had expected. Without an independent military, humanity would be completely defenseless against future threats. They would be at the mercy of the same species that had tried to wipe them out. Commander Gorth's tentacles writhed as he spoke. Human technology development will be limited to approved fields only. No research into weapons, faster-than-light travel, or artificial intelligence beyond current levels. Dr. Cole shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The humans had made significant advances in all those areas during the war. Their AI systems had been crucial in developing new tactics, and their improved FTL drives had allowed them to stay one step ahead of alien fleets. Finally, Rex continued, humanity will pay reparations equal to 40% of Earth's total economic output for the next 50 years. This will compensate the Alliance for the costs of this war. The terms were devastating. Morrison had expected harsh conditions, but this was essentially the complete subjugation of the human race. They would be reduced to second-class citizens in their own galaxy, forever dependent on the goodwill of species that had already shown they considered humans to be nothing more than a problem to be solved. Around the table, the alien representatives seemed pleased with themselves. They had crafted terms that would effectively end human expansion into space while appearing to be merciful by allowing the species to survive. It was, from their perspective, an elegant solution to the human problem. Morrison looked at each of the alien faces, noting their satisfied expressions. They believed they had won. They believed humanity had no choice but to accept these terms. After all, what could one young species do against the combined might of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations? The Admiral's fingers drummed silently on the table in a pattern that Brooks recognized immediately. 3 taps, then. A pause, then 3 more taps. It was a simple signal they had developed during the war. A way to communicate decisions without words. Brooks glanced at Cole, who had also noticed the signal. Both of them prepared themselves for what was coming next. Around the table, the alien delegates began to relax, anticipating human capitulation and the end of a war that had cost them more than they had ever expected. But Admiral Jake Morrison had not come here to surrender. He had come here to deliver a message that would change everything. Admiral Jake Morrison stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the strange alien metal of the conference room floor. The sound echoed in the massive chamber, and every conversation stopped as all eyes turned toward him. His 6-foot frame seemed small compared to the towering aliens around the table, but there was something in his posture that made even the largest creatures pay attention. The silence stretched for several long seconds, as Morrison looked around the table, meeting the gaze of each alien representative. Chancellor Vrex's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement, while the Crystalline Collective's energy form pulsed with colors that suggested satisfaction. Commander Gorth's tentacles had stopped their constant writhing, and even the neutral Vorthan mediator leaned forward slightly. We have listened to your terms, Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. We have considered them very carefully. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Our answer is no. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Chancellor Vrex's forearm shot up into the air, his claws clicking together in rapid succession as he made sounds that the translator couldn't properly convert. The crystalline collective's form suddenly blazed with angry red light, casting harsh shadows across the conference table. Commander Gorth released a stream of acidic bile that hissed and steamed as it hit the containment field around his chair. Other alien representatives began shouting in their native languages, creating a cacophony of sounds that ranged from musical tones to grinding metal. The bird-like avrans spread their wings and screeched, while the rock-like lithoids made the floor vibrate with their distress calls. Even the aquatic deep swimmers were thrashing in their water-filled suits through all the chaos. Morrison remained standing calmly, his hands clasped behind his back. Captain Lisa Brooks and Dr. Nathan Cole sat quietly in their chairs, their faces showing no emotion despite the pandemonium erupting around them. The other human representatives maintained the same composed demeanor, as if they had expected this. Reaction. High Counselor Nexus raised his hand for silence, but it took several minutes before the various alien species calmed down enough to listen. Admiral Morrison, he said, his voice carefully neutral, surely you understand what you are saying. Your species cannot hope to survive against the combined forces of the Galactic Alliance. Morrison nodded slightly. We understand the situation. Perfectly, Counselor. Which is why we are not just rejecting your terms. He paused again, and the room fell completely silent. We are withdrawing from these negotiations entirely. If the first announcement had caused chaos, this one created something closer to panic. Several of the smaller alien species began rapid conversations among themselves, their voices rising to near hysteria. The Zephyrion delegation clicked their claws together in what appeared to be some kind of emergency communication protocol. Dr. Cole stood up and activated a small device on the table in front of him. This is our formal notice of withdrawal from all peace negotiations, he said, his calm academic voice a stark contrast to the alien voices around him. We are also withdrawing from any future diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council. Commander. Gorth's tentacles writhed violently as he spoke. You cannot simply leave these negotiations. There are protocols, procedures that must be followed. The Galactic Council has authority over all spacefaring species. Actually, Cole replied, consulting a datapad, according to Section 47 of the Galactic Charter, any species may withdraw from negotiations at any time if they feel the terms are unreasonable. And according to Section 12, membership in the Galactic Council is voluntary. The alien representatives looked at each other with what appeared to be confusion. They had written those rules thousands of years ago, back when the galaxy was a much smaller place and the idea of a species. Simply walking away from the galactic community was unthinkable. Captain Brooks activated her communication device, speaking in clear, measured tones. All human vessels, this is Captain Brooks. Execute Protocol 7 immediately. Repeat, execute Protocol 7. The message was transmitted on frequencies that the aliens couldn't intercept, but the humans in the room knew exactly what it meant. Chancellor. Vrex slammed all four of his claws on the table, creating deep gouges in the metal surface. This is madness. You are one small species against the combined might of 12 galactic powers. We will crush you completely. Morrison gathered his papers with deliberate care, as if he were finishing up a routine business meeting. You are certainly welcome to try, Chancellor. But I should point out that you have been trying to crush us for 3 years now, and we are still here. The truth of that statement hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. They had expected the war against humanity to last perhaps 6 months. One young species with a handful of colonies and a primitive military should have been easy to defeat. Instead, the conflict had dragged on for 3 years, cost them millions of lives, and drained their resources significantly. Where will you go? Asked the representative from the Avrans, her musical voice tinged with genuine curiosity. "What will you do without the protection and trade opportunities of the galactic community?" Morrison smiled for the first time since the negotiations began. "That, I'm afraid, is no longer your concern?" He stood up and looked around the table one more time. "Gentlemen, ladies, and beings of various classifications, we thank you for your time. We will be taking our leave now." The human delegation began filing out of the conference room, their movements coordinated and purposeful. They had clearly planned this moment carefully, and nothing the aliens could say or do would change their minds. As they walked toward the exit, the alien representatives sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. High Counselor Nexus was the first to recover. "Admiral Morrison, please reconsider. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats out there that no single species can handle alone. The void hunters, the quantum storms, the interdimensional parasites. You need the protection of the galactic community." Morrison paused at the exit and turned back to face the mediator. "Counselor, with respect, the most dangerous thing we have encountered in this galaxy so far has been sitting around this table." He gestured to the assembled alien delegates. "We will take our chances with the unknown threats." As the humans left the conference room, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the space station. The massive viewing screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing long-range sensor readings that made several of the alien delegates recoil in horror. The displays showed the positions of all major fleets in the surrounding star systems, including the human defensive formations that had been protecting their remaining colonies, except the human fleets were no longer there. Where dozens of human warships had been positioned just hours before, space now showed only empty void. The aliens stared at the screens in disbelief, trying to understand how an entire fleet could simply vanish. Their own sensors showed no signs of battle, no debris fields, no evidence of what had happened to the human forces. General Kyle Martinez, the human military attaché, had remained behind while the rest of the delegation departed. He stood at the back of the room, watching the alien reactions with interest. "Looking for something?" he asked casually. All eyes turned to him, and he could see the fear beginning to creep into their expressions. The aliens were starting to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that humanity was trapped, that the peace negotiations were their only option for survival, but the humans had been planning something else entirely. Martinez activated a holographic display that filled the center of the conference room. The three-dimensional map showed the current positions of all major galactic fleets, trade routes, and strategic positions. Every alien vessel was accounted for, their locations marked with pulsing red dots, except for the human forces, which had completely disappeared from the galactic map. "You wanted to know what we were going to do," Martinez said, his voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. "Well, gentlemen, you are about to find out." General Kyle Martinez walked slowly toward the center of the conference room, his boots clicking against the alien metal floor. The holographic display cast strange shadows across his face as he studied the expressions of the alien delegates. Fear, confusion, and growing anger were written clearly across their features, even on the faces of species that looked nothing like humans. "For the past 6 months," Martinez began, his voice calm and measured, "while you have been planning your final offensive against our remaining colonies, we have been implementing something we call the Exodus Protocol." He gestured to the holographic map, where the absence of human forces created obvious gaps in what should have been a complete picture of galactic military positions. Chancellor Vrex's compound eyes focused on Martinez with laser-like intensity. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any large-scale movement of human vessels. We have been monitoring all your activities." Martinez smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and threatening at the same time. "You have been monitoring what we wanted you to monitor, Chancellor. Every human military vessel, every colony transport, every research station that you have been tracking was exactly where we wanted it to be until 12 hours ago." The crystalline collective's representative pulsed with rapid bursts of light. its form shifting between different geometric patterns as it processed this information. You are claiming that your entire fleet has been moved without our knowledge. This is not possible with current human technology. You are right about our old technology, Martinez replied. But you see, war has a way of accelerating innovation. When your species started attacking our colonies 3 years ago, we had to learn very quickly how to do things we had never done before. Dr. Nathan Cole stepped forward, carrying a small device that he placed on the conference table. The device projected a series of star charts that showed regions of space far beyond the current galactic boundaries. While you were busy fighting over territory and resources within this galaxy, we were exploring beyond it. The alien delegates stared at the star charts in stunned silence. The maps showed solar systems and star clusters that existed thousands of light years away from the current edge of known space. Some of the stars were marked with symbols that indicated human presence. Deep space reconnaissance, Cole continued, his academic voice making the incredible sound routine. We discovered something remarkable about 18 months ago. There are other galaxies out there, other star systems completely uninhabited and rich with resources that make anything in this galaxy look like pocket change. Commander Gorth's tentacles began writhing frantically as the implications of what he was hearing sank in. You are telling us that you have been exploring outside the galaxy. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone would be beyond your capabilities. Martinez activated another section of the holographic display, showing technical specifications that made several of the alien representatives lean forward in shock. We developed new, faster-than-light engines based on technology we captured from your own ships, improved them significantly, actually. Turns out that when you are fighting for your survival, you tend to find solutions that nobody thought were possible. The star charts zoomed in on specific systems, showing detailed surveys of planets, asteroid fields, and nebulae that contained resources in quantities that staggered the imagination. Entire worlds made of rare metals that were worth more than some species' entire economies. Gas giants filled with elements that could power civilizations for thousands of years. The Andromeda Galaxy, Cole said, pointing to a cluster of stars on the far edge of the display. 2.5 million light-years away from here. We established our first permanent base there 14 months ago. Our second base went operational 8 months ago. We now have 17 fully functional colonies in 3 different galaxies. High Counselor Nexus was the first to fully grasp what the humans were saying. You have been colonizing other galaxies while fighting a war here? How is this possible with your limited resources? Limited resources in this galaxy, Martinez corrected. But virtually unlimited resources once you get outside the boundaries of galactic civilization. And no competition from other species who want to control everything. The holographic display shifted to show the current status of human operations. Colony ships that had supposedly been destroyed in alien attacks were actually thriving in distant solar systems. Research stations that had gone dark were continuing their work in laboratories built around foreign stars. Military bases that had been abandoned were actually command centers coordinating operations across multiple galaxies. Every human settlement that you thought you had destroyed or captured was actually evacuated months ago, Martinez explained. Every human you thought you had killed or captured was actually relocated to our new territories? We have been moving our entire civilization piece by piece while you were focused on this war. The Avron's representative spread her wings in a gesture of distress. But the colonies we attacked, the battles we fought, the humans we captured, they were real. We have prisoners, we have destroyed settlements, Cole nodded sadly. Yes, some of those were real. We could not evacuate everyone without arousing suspicion. The people who stayed behind knew the risks. They volunteered to maintain the illusion that we were still fighting a conventional war while the real evacuation was taking place. The weight of that statement settled over the alien delegates like a heavy blanket. Humans had deliberately sacrificed some of their own people to maintain a deception that allowed the rest of their species to escape. It was a level of strategic thinking and long-term planning that none of the alien species had expected from such a young civilization. The asteroid mining operations in the Vega system, Martinez continued, were actually testing grounds for our new extraction technology. The research stations in the Centauri cluster were developing the improved FTL drives we needed for intergalactic travel. The military exercises near the galactic rim were actually scouting missions for viable colony sites. Chancellor Vrex stood up abruptly, his forearms gesturing wildly. Even if this is true, you cannot simply abandon an entire galaxy. What about trade relations, cultural exchange, mutual defense against external threats? Martinez looked around the table at the assembled alien representatives. Trade relations with species that want to control our technology. Cultural exchange with civilizations that consider us inferior. Mutual defense against external threats while you are the ones threatening us. He shook his head. No, thank you. The holographic display showed the final phase of the human evacuation. The last colony ships were departing from hidden bases throughout human space, their destinations set for star systems that existed far beyond the reach of any galactic power. Military escorts were guiding massive transport vessels filled with millions of humans toward new homes among alien stars. But the economic impact, protested the representative from the lithoids, the floor vibrating with his distress. Human trade routes have become integral to galactic commerce. Your technological innovations, your cultural products, your scientific research, the economic disruption alone could destabilize entire sectors. That sounds like a problem for the Galactic Council to solve, Martinez replied. We offered to be partners in this galaxy. You chose to make us enemies instead. Now we are choosing to be neither. The truth of the situation was finally becoming clear to the alien delegates. They had not just lost a war, they had lost an entire species. Humanity was not surrendering or being destroyed. They were leaving the galaxy entirely, taking with them all of their knowledge, technology, and economic contributions. You cannot do this, Vrex said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. The Galactic Council will not allow it. We have authority over all spacefaring species. Martinez smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in the expression. Your authority ends at the edge of this galaxy, Chancellor, and we are going much, much further than that. General Kyle Martinez walked toward the exit of the conference room, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. As he reached the massive doors, he paused and turned back to face the assembled alien delegates one final time. The holographic display still showed the empty spaces where human fleets should have been, a stark reminder of how completely they had been outmaneuvered. You assumed we were trapped here, Martinez said, his voice carrying easily across the vast chamber. You assumed we needed your permission to exist, your approval to expand, your protection to survive. You were wrong about all of it. He gestured to the star charts showing human colonies in distant galaxies. We are not running away from you. We are walking away from a community that sees us as nothing more than a problem to be solved. Captain Lisa Brooks activated her communication device from her position near the conference table. All remaining human installations, this is Captain Brooks. Execute final protocol immediately. Repeat, execute final protocol. The message was transmitted on encrypted frequencies that the aliens had never been able to break, but the humans throughout the galaxy knew exactly what it meant. Across human space, the last remaining outposts that had been maintaining the illusion of an ongoing war began their final phase of operations. Military installations that had been damaged, but not destroyed, suddenly erupted in brilliant explosions as their self-destruct systems activated. Research facilities that had appeared to be barely functional began purging their databases, wiping clean years of scientific advancement and technological innovation. Industrial complexes that had been producing weapons and supplies for the human war effort shut down their production lines and began dismantling their equipment. The massive factories that had been churning out spacecraft and military hardware for 3 years went dark as their power systems were systematically destroyed from within, The alien delegates watched in horror as their monitoring systems showed the destruction spreading throughout human territory. Every strategic resource, every technological advantage, every piece of infrastructure that might have been useful to the victorious alliance was being systematically eliminated. "You are destroying everything," Commander Gorth said, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "Resources that could benefit the entire galaxy are being wasted out of spite." Dr. Nathan Cole looked up from his datapad, his expression coldly professional. "We are ensuring that the species who tried to destroy us gain nothing from our departure. Every piece of technology you might have reverse-engineered, every strategic position you might have occupied, every resource you might have exploited, it is all being rendered useless." The crystalline collective's representative pulsed with rapid bursts of angry red light. "This is sabotage on a galactic scale. The economic damage will affect innocent species throughout the galaxy." "Innocent species," Martinez repeated, his voice tinged with bitter amusement. "You mean the same innocent species who voted to support your war against us? The same innocent species who provided ships and weapons to hunt down human colonies? The same innocent species who celebrated every human defeat as a victory for galactic civilization?" The holographic display updated to show the real-time destruction taking place throughout human space. Orbital shipyards that had been building the next generation of human vessels were breaking apart in spectacular explosions. Deep space mining operations were collapsing their tunnels and destroying their equipment. Even the agricultural worlds that had been feeding human populations were burning their crops and poisoning their soil, High Counselor. Nexus leaned forward in his chair, his blue skin pale with stress. "Surely some accommodation can be reached. The Galactic Council is prepared to negotiate new terms that would be more favorable to humanity." Martinez shook his head. "The time for negotiations was 3 years ago when we first made contact. The time for accommodation was when we offered to share our technology and join your community as equals. You chose war instead, and now you get to live with the consequences." The economic implications were beginning to dawn on the alien delegates. As they watched the systematic destruction of human infrastructure, human trade routes had become integral to galactic commerce over the past century, connecting distant star systems and facilitating the exchange of goods and resources. Human technological innovations had been adopted by dozens of species, improving everything from medical treatment to space travel. "The trade disruption alone could collapse the economies of entire sectors," said the representative from the Mordani, his voice thick with barely controlled panic. "Human shipping has been carrying 40% of all intergalactic cargo for the past 50 years. Human agricultural products feed billions of beings throughout the galaxy," added the Avrans delegate. "Without those food supplies, many worlds will face starvation." Commander Phil Turner, the human intelligence officer, stepped forward carrying a datapad filled with classified information. "We have also taken our information with us. Every star chart you shared with us, every technological collaboration we participated in, every strategic analysis we contributed to galactic defense, it has all been purged from our systems and secured in our new territories." The alien delegates looked at each other with growing alarm. Over the past century, human explorers had mapped vast regions of space that other species had never visited. Human scientists had contributed to research projects that had advanced galactic knowledge in dozens of fields. Human military analysts had helped develop defense strategies against external threats that plagued the galaxy. The defense satellites protecting the core worlds from interdimensional incursions, Turner continued, were built using human technology. The early warning systems that detect Void Hunter activity were designed by human engineers. The quantum shields that protect your most important installations were developed through human research. Chancellor Vrex's compound eyes widened as he realized the full scope of what they were losing. "You cannot simply abandon your obligations to galactic security. There are threats that affect all of us." "You mean threats like the ones you have been to us for the past 3 years?" Turner replied. "We have been defending ourselves against the greatest threat we have encountered in this galaxy, And that threat has been sitting around this conference table. The holographic display shifted to show the current status of various galactic defense systems. Critical installations that had been maintained by human technicians were already showing signs of deterioration. Research projects that had depended on human expertise were grinding to a halt. Trade networks that had relied on human logistics were beginning to collapse. The Proxima defense grid will fail within 6 months without human maintenance, Turner said, reading from his datapad. The quantum communication network will start experiencing critical errors within 3 months. The galactic early warning system will be operating at less than 30% efficiency within 2 weeks. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as they realized that humanity had not just been participants in galactic civilization, they had been essential to its continued functioning. Their departure would create a cascade of failures that would affect every aspect of galactic society. Our medical research, Dr. Cole added, has led to treatments for diseases that affect 17 different species. Our agricultural techniques have increased food production on hundreds of worlds. Our engineering innovations have made faster-than-light travel safer and more efficient for everyone. And now all of that knowledge is leaving with us, Martinez said. Every human doctor, every human engineer, every human scientist is departing for our new territories. The species who wanted to control us and limit our development are about to discover what the galaxy looks like without human innovation. The destruction throughout human space was nearly complete. The last human installations were going dark. Their final transmissions confirming that the Scorched Earth Protocol had been successfully implemented. Nothing remained that could be of use to the alien alliance, and the economic shockwaves were already beginning to ripple throughout the galaxy. As the human delegation prepared to leave the conference room for the final time, the alien representatives sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had not just lost a war, they had lost the most innovative and adaptable species in the galaxy, and the consequences of that loss would be felt for generations to come. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away from the peace negotiations, and the galaxy had not been the same since. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the UCS Independence, looking out at a view that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. 3 alien suns cast their light across a nebula filled with colors that had no names in any human language, while construction ships worked tirelessly to build humanity's newest orbital station. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering that combined human innovation with resources that existed nowhere in the Milky Way. The hull was made from metals discovered in asteroid fields of the Andromeda Galaxy, materials so strong and light that they made the best human technology from their old home look primitive by comparison. The engines ran on fuel extracted from gas giants that burned with energies unknown to galactic science, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker approached Morrison with a datapad containing the latest reports from their monitoring stations. "Sir, we are still receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council. They have been trying to establish contact for the past 4 months." Morrison took the datapad and scrolled through the messages. The tone had changed dramatically since those first angry demands for humanity to return and face the consequences of their actions. The early transmissions had been full of threats and warnings about the dire fate that awaited any species that dared to defy the galactic order. "What are they offering now?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer would be more of the same desperate bargaining that had been arriving with increasing frequency. "Full membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights," Parker replied. "Territorial guarantees for all human colonies, both old and new. Complete technological sharing agreements with access to all galactic research. They are even offering to make Earth a protected heritage site with special status." Morrison handed the datapad back to Parker without reading the full message. "File it with the others. Have there been any changes in the galactic situation?" Parker activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the Milky Way galaxy. The image was not encouraging for the species they had left behind. Red zones indicated areas of active conflict, while yellow zones showed regions experiencing economic collapse or social unrest. Green zones, indicating stable and peaceful areas, were becoming increasingly rare. The war between the remaining species has intensified since we left, Parker reported. Without humanity as a common enemy, the old rivalries have resurged with a vengeance. The Zephyrian Empire and the Crystalline Collective are fighting over the territories we abandoned. The smaller species are being forced to choose sides or face conquest. The irony was not lost on Morrison. The alien alliance that had united to destroy humanity had fallen apart within weeks of achieving their goal. Without the human threat, to keep them focused on a common purpose, the ancient hatreds and territorial disputes that had shaped galactic politics for thousands of years had returned with devastating intensity. Economic indicators are even worse, Parker continued. The collapse of human trade routes has disrupted commerce throughout the galaxy. Food shortages are being reported on dozens of worlds that depended on human agricultural exports. The technology sector has contracted by 60% without human innovation and expertise. Dr. Rachel Stone, the expedition's chief scientist, joined them on the observation deck carrying her latest research findings. Admiral, I have completed the preliminary survey of the Kepler 442 system. The results are extraordinary. Morrison turned his attention to the scientist, always interested in what their exploration teams were discovering in their new home. Stone activated her own holographic display, showing a detailed map of a solar system that contained no fewer than 7 habitable worlds. The resources in this single system exceed everything we had access to in the entire Milky Way, Stone explained. The third planet contains deposits of rare elements that are worth more than the gross domestic product of most galactic civilizations. The asteroid belt is filled with materials that could support human expansion for the next 1,000 years. The fourth planet showed signs of previous habitation, but the structures were clearly abandoned and had been empty for millions of years. Initial surveys suggested that whatever species had built them had achieved a level of technology that surpassed anything in the current galactic community. We have also made contact with 2 indigenous species, Stone continued. Both are peaceful and interested in trade relationships. Neither has any desire to join a galactic government or submit to external authority. They seem to understand the concept of mutual cooperation without domination. Morrison smiled at that last observation. The species they had encountered in the Andromeda Galaxy were refreshingly different from the civilizations they had left behind. None of them seemed interested in conquest or control. None of them demanded submission or tribute. They were content to explore, trade, and learn without trying to impose their will on others. Captain Lisa Brooks approached the group carrying a communication device that was buzzing with incoming messages. Sir, we have received another urgent transmission from the Galactic Council. This one is marked as highest priority and claims to be from the emergency session of all remaining species. Morrison took the device and activated the message. The holographic image showed High Counselor Nexus, but the neutral mediator looked haggard and exhausted. His blue skin was pale, and his normally calm demeanor had been replaced by obvious desperation. Admiral Morrison, if you receive this message, please respond immediately. The galaxy is in chaos. The Alliance has collapsed completely, and we are facing threats that no single species can handle alone. The Void Hunters have detected the weakness in our defenses and are launching massive invasions. 3 core worlds have already fallen. The message continued with increasingly frantic pleas for humanity to return and help restore order to the galaxy. Nexus described economic collapse, military defeats, and social upheaval on a scale that threatened the survival of galactic civilization. Itself, we were wrong, Nexus admitted, his voice breaking with emotion. We were terribly, catastrophically wrong about humanity. You were not the threat to galactic peace. You were the foundation that held it together. Without your innovation, your adaptability, your unique perspective on problem-solving, we cannot maintain the civilization we spent millennia building. Morrison listened to the entire message without comment, then handed the device back to Brooks. Any response, sir? She asked. Morrison looked out at the alien stars of their new home. where human colonies were thriving beyond anything they had achieved in the Milky Way. Construction ships were building cities that would house millions of people. Research stations were making discoveries that would advance human knowledge by centuries. Military outposts were protecting it all without needing to fight constant wars against species that resented their very existence. No response necessary. Morrison said quietly. "We have found something better than victory, Captain. We have found freedom." The UCS Independence continued its journey through the spiral arms of the Andromeda Galaxy, carrying humanity toward a future that was entirely their own creation. Behind them, in the Milky Way, the former galactic powers struggled to maintain order in a universe that suddenly seemed much larger and more dangerous without the innovative, stubborn, and surprisingly resourceful humans to help them navigate its challenges. Free from the constraints and prejudices of their former neighbors, human civilization had exploded into new frontiers of possibility. They had discovered worlds that defied imagination, made allies who respected their independence, and built a society that reflected their own values rather than conforming to the expectations of others the galaxy they had left behind could keep. Its ancient hatreds, its territorial disputes, and its desire to control everything that dared to be different. Humanity had found a new home among the stars, and they had no intention of ever looking back.